Hello there to all my virtual students in Management 386. I hope that you have had a fantastic day. It's great to be with you today. We're going to talk a little bit today about how to start building teams. But before we do that, I want to do a bit of a recap. Now, remember, I told you I'm going to teach this class kind of like a math class. Everything builds on itself. So, in order to better understand how it all builds on itself, I like to review a lot. It helps to solidify the concepts for you. So we'll start back, we're talking about the individual, but I want to do this in a way so that I can remind you what we're really doing. In this class, we start out at talking about the entrepreneur on the individual level. And what we're talking about is the fact that every person is dealt a set of cards. And what we're trying to do right now by taking this back to the individual level is to be really self-aware and to have a really good understanding of what the cards are that we were dealt. So in order to do that, I am going to go back to this digital whiteboard that you all know drives me crazy because I'm not very good at it. And I'm going to share screen with you. And let's see what we can do with this whiteboard, okay? All right, let's review for a bit. Remember, we've talked about the individual. We are the entrepreneur. And we've talked about the theory of bounded rationale. And that tells us that we have a limited amount of knowledge. And that knowledge is represented by everything inside this circle. Now, the knowledge that we have is a function of two things. It's a function of our experiences, and it is also a function of time. Now, what this means is that the knowledge inside everyone's boundary is different because everyone has different experiences and everyone's been alive for a different amount of time. That doesn't mean that because people have different knowledge inside their boundary, that one person is necessarily smarter than the other. It just means that we all have different knowledge. It's impossible for any two people to have the same exact knowledge within their realm. So that's really interesting to note and something important to remember as we move forward. The other things that we've talked about here is we've talked about personality traits and we talked about the big five. We talked a lot about agreeableness. I'm not going to write all these out, okay? We talked about neuroticism. We talked about openness to experience. We read about it in the traits article. We also talked about introverts versus extroverts. And finally, we talked about, let me get this, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness to experience. Wouldn't you know this? Like I've taught this, this is the third time I've taught this today, and I'm going to like completely blank out on you guys in this video. Agreeableness, neuroticism, open to experience, introversion, extroversion, and conscientiousness. And conscientiousness is made up of two parts. It is dependability and it is achievement motivation. Now, I gave you a link, so hopefully all of you were able to go to that link and you were able to take the Big Five personality test to see where you fall on all of the traits. The truth is, everyone has all five of these. It's just a matter of which one shows up more, which ones do you have high levels of that trait, and which ones are lower. Now, every person has their own unique set of traits. It doesn't make you good. It doesn't make you bad. It just makes you you. We learned about some other traits inside the article that you read. We also learned about locus of control, and we know that it can be either internal or external. We also talked about risk tolerance. Some people have high tolerance for risk, some are low. The other thing that the traits article pointed out for you is that these can also be dependent upon the context. It talked about it in the context of venture phases and how risk tolerance might fluctuate some. We talked about in last class how locus of control might fluctuate as well depending upon the context. Finally, we also talked about self-efficacy. That's an interesting word that really is indicative of your confidence to perform a task, a certain task. This can be generalized self-efficacy or it can be more specific. The specific one that we talked about in the article was entrepreneurial self-efficacy. And now remember, it is my job as a professor to teach you enough information to help you increase your entrepreneurial self-efficacy. So I hope that by the time that we finish up 386, your level has grown quite a bit. So we've looked at all of this and we're thinking about this in terms of the individual. These are all the different kinds of cards we're dealt. We can't change what cards we were dealt. We have no control over what cards we were dealt. The key to success is being able to play the cards that you have really effectively. Now, I hope that all of the things that we've learned about the individual level, and there's always more we could always add, culminated in the homework assignment that I asked you to do, where you did your strengths and weaknesses analysis. Now, I hope that you included components of all of this and thought about these in terms of your strengths and weaknesses. You could also include some of your skills in there, maybe your resources that you have at your hand, maybe your network. There's some other things that you can include here. And what should really be showing up on your strengths and weaknesses analysis at this point are your cards. These are your cards, and they're fantastic. Everyone's cards are exactly what you're supposed to have. The key is not to judge cards and say, oh my goodness, I feel like I have a good hand of cards, or I feel like I have a bad hand. That's something that society imposes upon us. Try not to be judgmental of your cards. Instead, try to be very aware and pragmatic of the cards that you have. Let's control what we can control. We can't control the cards we have. However, we can control how we play them, and that's really important. So I'm going to give you an example really quickly of how it doesn't matter what cards you were dealt. If you play them effectively, you can be successful. Let's think about Oprah. I'm not sure how much you all know about her, but I think we can all agree she's a very, very successful woman. She has built a business empire. Let's talk about Oprah's cards. You see, Oprah was born in South Mississippi and grew up there during the height of some of the civil unrest. She was an African American woman in a broken home who woke up every day afraid of what might happen to her because of what she looked like, something she had no control over. I can't imagine living in fear like that. It must have been terrifying. So she grew up in Mississippi as an African American woman in civil unrest in a broken home. She was molested by a family member for multiple years as a preteen. She had a baby that passed away. See, Oprah had everything that society would say is working against her. She had a challenging hand of cards, if you think about that from society standards. However, let's look at what she did with those cards. Maybe we've used some of those cards that we talked about as weaknesses, but she knew she also had strengths. She had charisma. She was really smart. She could build great relationships. She knew how to ask questions that made people know she was hearing them. She practiced great empathy. And she also was able to build a fantastic network that helped her build her career. Oprah went from that African American girl in South Mississippi during the civil rights era to Oprah, a one-word brand. She's the perfect example of it's not your cards that dictate your success. It is the way that you play your cards. So where we're going to go now is I've given you some really good tools to help you evaluate what cards you've been dealt so that you can really articulate those, memorize them, understand them. But now let's take a couple of steps forward and let's learn how to start playing those cards. So let's get back over here and look back at this fantastically artistic board I have and how good I am with it, please. This is us. We know what, and we're going to move it up, what our strengths and weaknesses are. We at this point have a really, really good idea of the cards we've been dealt. So now what do we do with them? We need to learn how to play them. And the first thing that you're going to need to do in order to play those cards effectively, regardless of the goal you have at hand, is to build a really, really good A team around you. So, step one, build your A team. It doesn't matter what your goal is. If it's an entrepreneurial venture, if it's the president of the PTA, if it is trying to gather resources to and all the knowledge that you need to finish your college degree, whatever it is, you need to have a good team around you. I know that most of you have worked in teams as students. If you're a student in person, you've probably just been thrown into teams, and the people who are on your team were either your buddies or the people sitting beside you. If you've been in the workplace, you know that you get put into teams to do different jobs. And you know that lots of times you don't have a really say so over who's on your team. However, when you start charting your own life and you start planning your life, then you get to pick who's on your team. Well, how do you do that? The way that you do that is by number one, being aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then start playing these cards, and you need to find people who also know their cards so that their strengths prop up your weaknesses. We've heard a lot of buzzwords about diversity and inclusion, and it makes me sad that it's been politicized because it makes people have a negative connotation about the importance of diversity and inclusion in teams. However, this will scientifically show you how it's important that you build teams that are very diverse. You want to have a coalition with someone here so that the info they have within their bounded rationale and their strengths and weaknesses adds to yours, is not the same as yours. You see, if you pick someone who's just like you, who has a really similar skill set to you, really similar knowledge, really similar background, then what has happened is when you form a team with them, 1 + 1 still equals 1. But the goal in playing cards is not to collect 2 of a kind, 3 of a kind, or even 4 of a kind. That doesn't benefit us when we're trying to achieve our goals. What we're trying to do with the cards that we're playing is we're trying to collect all 52. We want a full deck. And the best way to do that is to surround yourself with people who have diverse information, things that are different than yours. So when we build teams with people who are diverse, then 1 + 1 begins to equal 2. The goal in building your team, and you need to do this with all of your team members and everyone on your A team, is that once you all build a team and you have a coalition, what you hope is that your collective bounded rationale has gotten much bigger. And you can see that the more diversity that you bring to the team, the bigger your circle will be. Now, the cool part in all of this is that remember back when we talked about uncertainty and risk, and we said uncertainty resides out here outside your boundary? But the bigger that you can make your boundary, the more you've minimized uncertainty. The better and more diverse team you build, the greater your boundary, the more that you have minimized uncertainty. So be very, very intentional in the way that you build your teams. You don't want to turn to the person who's sitting beside you and say, hey, you want to be on my team? The odds that that person has a diverse set of skills that complements yours, it's pretty low. So be more entrepreneurial aware, listen, active listening, and start looking for people who have different skill sets than you. Now, this plays out in all aspects of our life. Whether you are an undergraduate student, a traditional student, and you're coming through, this is really important for you. I know that some of you may think, oh, I don't even need to start building my A team. I'm just in school right now. Let me give you a great little statistic. Did you know that statistics says you will make annually, your income will be within $10,000 of the 5 people you spend the most time with, within $10,000. Look around at the 5 people you spend the most time with. What do you think their odds are of being successful and having a really high salary? I mean, like if you're the loser of the group, you're looking around going, yeah, they're going to bring me up. And that's fantastic for you. But just be sure you're not looking around your friend group going, wow. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should dump friends in the least. I'm not. There's a place for every friend in your life. But when you start charting your course for success within your career and with goals, there's a difference in your A team and your close friends. Be sure that you build an A team and you spend a lot of time with your A team, and they are people who are diverse from you, who expand the bounded rationale for everyone around you, and that are minimizing uncertainty, and make sure you're setting yourself up for success. Now, perhaps you're trying to build a team now to win a football game. Let's talk about this in terms of Nick Saban. Remember, I told you I taught Coach Saban everything he knows. Not really, but the process is not rocket science. He's just really good at executing it, and he's disciplined. Let's go back here. I'm sure that Coach Saban has a really, really keen understanding and is very highly self aware. I'm sure he knows the cards that are in his hand inside and out. He knows. And because of that, he has a really, really good understanding of the type of people that he should surround himself with so that he can decrease uncertainty, increase the collective bounded rationale, and be successful. You see, if you can build a better team than your competitors, and you can make your collective bounded rationale larger than your competitors, then you have minimized uncertainty more than they have. And you have taken the first step to ensuring your success. So I'm sure he knows from a skill standpoint what coaches he needs to bring in. He knows what he needs from an offensive side. He knows what he needs from a defensive side. I'm sure he knows what he needs from a personality standpoint on people to surround him. He has a very strong, domineering personality. He appears to be a perfectionist, and he has very high standards. Now, that would relate to a type A personality or maybe a control freak a little bit. So it makes sense that he has to be very careful about the coaches that he brings in to be sure that they can adhere to his style of leadership. I think he really brings in people that he respects their intelligence and he respects their skills, but they have to respect his boundaries for where they can use their skills. So he has a really keen understanding of the type of people that he works best with. This is something that you're going to have to figure out for yourself. Now, remember, I told you you're going to need to start thinking about the way some of this stuff ties together. So if we make this just a bit smaller and we start thinking about personality traits and building teams, if we have a person here who's really, really high on agreeableness and they surround themselves with people who are also really high on agreeableness, how do you think that might turn out? I don't know how much they'll get done because they'll all be sitting around trying to make each other happy. I don't know. What do you want to do? Oh my gosh, well, I'm okay with anything. What do you want to do? That could be one way it plays out. Or maybe one person throws out an idea that's really not even the best idea, but because they're all agreeable, they're like, oh, sure, that sounds like a good idea. Let's go with that. So while you still need agreeable people around you, having everyone as high on agreeableness could really be detrimental to your outcome. However, if you're really low on agreeableness, how might that play out if you surround yourself with other people who are low on disagreeableness? are low on agreeableness. I'm sorry. Right. You're probably going to butt heads because you're going to be disagreeing all the time. There is a place for this to happen, but you have to be really careful in who you surround yourself with. What if you have a leader who is really low on agreeableness and they surround themselves with only people who are high on agreeableness? This is the scenario where we see a really type A leader surrounding themselves with yes men. It's really effective in getting the leader's agenda taken care of. But what's happened is he's effectively just negated any of the info that they have inside their bounded rationale. So the collective bounded rationale of a team like that is not nearly as large as a team that has been really purposeful at trying to place different personality types together to make sure they have everything covered. So these are one of the ways that I want you to start thinking about the traits and how might they work together or how they might harm each other if they are together. You're going to hear a lot about fit, fit in the workplace. And what's really happening there is like as you interview for jobs, or as Coach Saban brings in people right now, he's trying to hire a lot of assistant coaches, right? Once you've made it to the list for the second interview or so, then you can pretty much assume the skills that you need to have for the job are there. Once they bring you in for a second interview, what they're really looking for is fit. They're looking at your cards. Do your cards fit into the plan that they have for their organization? Do your cards help them get closer to reaching the whole 52, the whole deck? Now, maybe they do and maybe they don't. But if they don't, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. That just means that at this point in that organization, you don't fit what they're looking for. But that doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. That means go on and find the next organization that is looking for the set of cards that you bring to the table. On the converse side of that, you can also start to look for organizations that you know need you. And with that being the case, you can start to chart out who you're going to interview with and where you want to work, rather than sitting back and waiting to see who's going to take me, who's going to tell me I fit. You can be much more proactive once you really master the skills and understand how this all works. You see, this is how all organizations are thinking. So if this is how you know they're thinking, you can better prepare. One more thing in about how should we play our cards. Once we build a team like this, it's really easy to be with someone who might get on your nerves. Okay, so if I am a very detail-oriented person and I really like to, I'm going to stop sharing screen with you because we're over that now. Well, I said I am. There we go. Let's stop sharing. There we go. If I am on a team with someone who comes to the team and they're very different from me, we have very different personality types, and I am really organized. I have a schedule. That schedule is set, and I don't want anybody messing with it. And I want everybody to do everything on my schedule. And I've teamed up with a procrastinator, a person who likes to wait till the very end to get everything done. Well, when I say the word procrastinator, a lot of you are going to go like, oh yeah, I don't want that person around. And you can think about it that way if you want to. However, when I hear the word procrastinator, I hear a person who works very well under pressure, a person who probably works best under pressure. So if you're the person who's organized, build the procrastinator into your schedule. Meet them halfway. Once we start to surround ourselves with diverse people, then we have to start practicing respecting all that they bring to the table and what that really means. We can't try to make them adhere to our policies or the way that we like to do things, because when we do, then we're negating the fact that they're bringing different strengths and weaknesses to the table. You have to learn how to respect it, how to sometimes button it up and bite your lip and let things play out. This is how you effectively form a team and then effectively work in a team. Hopefully, you're going to be very purposeful about making your team. And if you are, remind yourselves, why did I put this person on my team? Oh, yeah, it's because they bring XYZ to the table. Now, right now, their V might really be bugging me, but they do have XYZ. So I'm willing to work past this other part that really drives me insane. Well, there's a lot of maturity that goes into that. There's a lot of empathy and a lot of patience. But we have to really, really understand how to work with people to have effective, diverse teams. So we've gone through a lot today. You know what your cards are on those strengths and weaknesses. You now know the first steps in learning how to play them. The first step, build an A team. Surround yourself with diverse people who expand your collective bounded rationale. Reduce your uncertainty. And once you do that, then respect what they bring to the table and work together with respect for the skills that each has. When their weaknesses show up, be patient and be tolerant, because we all have weaknesses. Those are a couple of the first steps in how you play your cards. I hope that this was all super informative for you. I look forward to seeing you in next class. Have a great, great weekend, and I hope to see you all soon. Catch you on the flip side.